During all 6 seasons of Gossip Girl, the mystery of the titular character's identity remained a mystery. It was not until the series finale that this question was finally answered. As it turned out, Gossip Girl was actually a boy all along. Dan Humphrey, Penn Badgley, was the mystery behind the drama, scandal and lies that fueled the fiery plot of the Upper East Side of New York City. It was shocking for fans, who pointed out why Dan being Gossip Girl makes no sense. It might also shock them to know Dan wasn't the TV producer's first choice to be Gossip Girl. Gossip Girl was an anonymous blogger who would post juicy secrets at the most treacherous of times. Characters would even use Gossip Girl to send in tips about themselves or others, all manipulation tactics in a world of opulence and glamour. The Gossip Girl reboot ended after just 2 seasons on HBO Max, but the identity of this Gossip Girl was revealed from the very first episode, as a bullied teacher getting back at spoiled students. This is a stark contrast from its predecessor, which taunted fans for 6 seasons before outing Dan Humphrey as Gossip Girl. Penn Badgley's Dan Humphrey is Gossip Girl. Before he was a murderer in You, he was Gossip Girl. Penn Badgley as Dan Humphrey was one of the most relatable and likable characters in a show where wealth and greed were at the epicenter. He was the outsider who found his way into the upper echelon of society, but he was still a good person. He was the voice of reason, the writer, and the first normal boyfriend for socialite teen Serena van der Woodsen. He was also Gossip Girl. Dan was among the few Gossip Girl characters who got a fitting ending, with a successful writing career and getting married to the girl of his dreams. Serena also inspired him to take on the mantle of anonymous blogger poking and prodding at the A-list teens of New York City. It might seem obvious the one main character whose passion in life is writing would be behind the gossip website. But Dan's good nature and Brooklyn boy charms made him being Gossip Girl seem out of the question. It's also one of the reasons he was finally chosen. Shock value. When Gossip Girl reveals Dan's secret alias. It took 6 seasons to unmask Dan as Gossip Girl. Penn Badgley as Dan Humphrey looks at his phone in Gossip Girl. It would take all the way until the Gossip Girl series finale New York, I Love You XO in Season 6, Episode 10, to reveal that Dan Humphrey was Queen G. But the wait was paid off. As the main cast sat around shocked when Gossip Girl made one last post explaining her true identity, Dan delivered an unforgettable monotone voiceover about the reasons why he created her in the first place. It was his way to invite himself into the luxurious world of the Upper East Side. He got himself a seat at the table when there was none. As Dan explained, if I wasn't born into this world, maybe I could write myself into it. I overheard enough conversations to be able to mimic the language of the Constance girls, but every writer needs his muse. Dan felt that even though he was treated like a joke, he was at least being talked about as Gossip Girl. Because the reveal fit with what the show had established about his character, it didn't ruin the mystery. Plus, the twist was surprising for fans who'd stuck through all the drama the years Gossip Girl aired. How the show changed the plans for Gossip Girl's identity. Nate and Eric were also up for Gossip Girl. Dan Humphrey may have ended up being revealed as Gossip Girl, but he was not the first choice. Teen Vogue reported Joshua Safran, an executive producer and writer on the show, said, I like to joke that Dan was Gossip Girl because I had left the show by then. Dan was not my intended Gossip Girl. According to him, Nate Archibald was originally going to be unmasked as the keyboard king. Eric van der Woodsen, Serena's troubled little brother, was another character who was supposed to be Gossip Girl. But when a New York Post article hinted Eric and Gossip Girl were one and the same, producers scratched that idea. Nate's name bounced around after a staff writer had an epiphany about the first 5 seasons. Nate never sent in a tip to Gossip Girl, so he must be her. In the end, it was the resident writer of the show who was unveiled as Gossip Girl. Dan Humphrey may not have had the last laugh, but he did have the last XO.